All in Sports Network. We love sports.
Is Tuesday, February 11th, and this is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson, and a big weekend for the women's sports of Texas athletics. Women's basketball with a huge, upset is a tough word to use, a huge win over South Carolina. Most would consider it an upset of sorts, but a big win for women's basketball over South Carolina. Softball starting off their season undefeated and looks every bit as the number one team in the country. And Jake predicted the Super Bowl pretty much spot on. And it may not have been in our Super Bowl bets show on Saturday, but I have text proof of his prediction. What was it, the night before the Super Bowl or the day of?
I think it was the night before, because I went 0 dark 30, and I was being more sarcastic on our show than anything. But my real prediction, as we'll get into, was spot on.
Yeah, that was our Saturday Super Bowl bets was what we wanted to happen in the Super Bowl, which a lot of it was just make this the worst game possible because we didn't want to see either team in the Super Bowl. So, but you did send me your actual prediction, and I mean, you were about as spot on as you could possibly get without getting it exactly right. So, but let's start off with women's basketball, Jake. What a game. Just a great game all the way around. I mean, Texas, in a way, kind of controlled the majority of that game.
Yeah, they did. Which, first off, you and I were texting like this was a Texas football game. Yeah. The crowd was awesome.
Awesome.
It shows how big the backing is of a Texas fan base behind a sport and a coach that gets you invested in their program. And obviously fans are invested regardless. We saw that, with the bad era of football. Stadium was still full. Basketball, people are still showing up. It's quiet, but that's because of the product not giving you a reason to cheer, but people are still there. Games have been sold out. But this game was the perfect example, man. And like you said, from start to finish, exciting and controlled. Texas never trailed. South Carolina tied it at one point late in the game, but Texas never trailed in this game. They dominated the glass. I thought the first half defensive performance was some of the best team defense I've seen in a college basketball game.
And we knew that South Carolina was going to make a run. We knew that they were going to make a push. It's South Carolina. They're not just going to lay down and be like, well, we're getting dominated. Today's not our day. That's not how they operate, and that's not how Coach Dawn Staley, runs her program. But Texas women's basketball snaps the 57 SEC game win streak of South Carolina with the 4-point victory on Sunday. And, I mean, I think they hadn't lost an away conference game, I want to say, since 2021. I think that is right. 2021 or 2022. Either way, it's a crazy stat. And so for Texas in their first year in the conference to go ahead and kind of put that stamp, and their placeholder within the conference with a big win like that, that's huge for the program.
Yeah. And like we said, at the first game, the team was pretty embarrassed. It was one thing to lose to South Carolina. It was another to get dismantled the way they did, because that's just not something that happens under Vic Schaefer. Is one of his worst blowout losses, if not his worst blowout loss at Texas. He hasn't had many losses in general at Texas.
And it sure as hell ain't going to happen twice in one season.
Yeah, and Michael Jordan, they took it personally. They took it personally, and they made that clear with their play on the court. Yeah. The defense in the first half was great. Attacked the boards. Did a lot of what we said, which was play like you did in the first game in so many areas, but make some shots. Mm-hmm. And while they did not make a single 3-pointer, they only attempted 4, which is one thing I love about this team is they know their identity. They know they're not a good 3-point shooting team. And every game they are, like, I think the most I've seen them shoot in a game I've watched from start to finish is like 9.
You know what this team kind of reminds me of? Just the style of play is like a mid-2000s basketball team where they rely on mid-range jumpers and getting to the rim, high percentage looks, And if they can get an open look and that's 10 feet away from the basket, they're not going to pass it up for a three, or they're not going to pass it up for a layup. They're just going to take the 10-foot jumper, and they take the open looks that's handed to them, regardless of where it is at the court or regardless of what the analytics say, because analytically, your players can't shoot a three. So why even attempt them?
Yeah. And they run many different offenses, but they're always moving, whether on the ball or off the ball. There's always movement and trying to get someone a lane. And I love the way that they attack the lane with ball screens and constant motion offense, and then have someone on the other post as you drive into the opposite side, to where if they attack a double team, you have someone to dish it off to for an easy bucket. You also typically have someone around the high post area for that mid-range shot that we talked about. And then obviously they have a bunch of players who are really effective at getting to the bucket and finishing. And when they don't finish, getting an offensive rebound, because they are, I believe, the second best in the country on that.
Yep.
And so and it showed against a very elite South Carolina team. And what was more impressive to me also was to lose that lead in the third quarter, be tied up going into the fourth, and you could have just ended up losing a competitive, close game. And I think we would have still been pretty positive in our talking about that game after, because they played great all the way through. They could have lost and played great. Instead, they found a way to get it done in that fourth quarter and finish it off, even though South Carolina had really got all the momentum back in that third quarter. They came out, got the crowd fired up immediately, and were able to close it out strong to finish the game, even though it's a little scary at times. But you expect that against a top team like South Carolina. Now this is a team that, if you know that they can play to this level, can they put that together in a tournament? Because if they can, you can beat South Carolina. You can beat anyone.
Yeah. I mean, we saw the highest ceiling of this team on Sunday, Jake. Like, you can beat South Carolina, you can win a national championship. And so I think, with that being said, if I look at going into the tournament and you're playing your best basketball for 3 weeks, you're looking at a Final Four. You're looking at a national championship contending team. Now, to win it, that's a whole nother thing. It's the tournament. Anything can happen in the tournament. But I'm just saying, if Texas plays this caliber of basketball throughout the tournament, you're playing in the Final Four. You're at least represented as one of the Final Four teams in the country.
Yeah, I mean, right now you have UCLA, who's number one, who is undefeated and does have a pretty dominant win over South Carolina. So they still loom large as that kind of women's team who's kind of steamrolled. I'm looking at their schedule right now. Everybody. They have steamrolled everybody.
Yeah.
I don't think they might not have had a game
within 10 points.
That is single digits now that I'm looking, which is scary. So you still have that top dog right now. That's the clear top dog.
And Notre Dame's number 2.
Notre Dame's number 2, who Texas lost it to overtime on the road. I watched that game. Notre Dame had a great environment. Texas didn't play their style of basketball. They shot a lot of threes, especially in the overtime. Didn't really play great team defense. I would love to see Texas rematch them now. And then you have South Carolina 4, who you just beat, LSU 5, who you got coming up. And then you have Kentucky, who's number 8, who's also coming up in the next week, which we'll get into in tomorrow's show. But still, you got a tough schedule up ahead. This was a lot of
excitement. A lot of exciting games coming up for Texas.
A great start to one of the toughest 3-game stretches you can possibly have in a regular season.
And, hey, Texas goes 2 for 3 out of those games. I'm happy. I mean, unless you just lay a complete dud and you look like crap and you just didn't come out ready to play, that would be another story. But you play hard and you come out of this stretch of games between South Carolina, LSU, Kentucky at 2 and 3. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that, but I think this team can win them all.
Oh, absolutely.
To me, this is the game. And
I'm just saying,
to win an SEC championship, you're going to have to.
Yeah, and I'm saying if they slip a game in the regular season and they have 2 conference losses, it's not the end of your season by any.
No. I just right now I want an SEC title. Yeah. I'm invested into this ladies.
And I want a regular season title and I want an SEC tournament title. And then I
Yeah.
want to make a run into the March Madness. Like, this team's capable of doing it, so you might as
Yeah.
well do it. And it'll be exciting to see kind of where they finish. Jake, I just wanted to shout out individual players. Shea Holly, Kayla Oldacre, and Taylor Jones just dominating the offensive boards. Shea Holly with 4 offensive rebounds. Kayla Oldcandy coming off the bench playing 21 minutes with 4 offensive rebounds. Taylor Jones with 4 offensive rebounds, 4 defensive rebounds. But just kind of just set the tone. When your bigs can set the tone like that down low. And Oldacre, she went 6 of 10 on shooting and had 13 points with 6 rebounds coming off the bench. Shea Holly with 4 points, but 6 rebounds. And then I will never be able to say the name.
I was about to bring it up.
Yeah.
Njaka Lenga Montanda.
Winintanda. I think it's Windintanda.
Winintanda.
But she went 4 for 4 shooting, and then also had 6 rebounds on the game.
Yeah, but her points when she scored, it felt like
Big.
It was in some of the most impactful buckets of the
was
game.
It was when South Carolina tied the game, or whenever they cut it down to 2. She hit a big shot or an offensive rebound put back.
I was going to look at the box score after the game, and I was like, I wonder how many points Winintanda had. Because I feel like the broadcast said it 6 different ways. Not blaming them. That name is a tongue twister.
Giannis Antetokounmpo and Dominican Sue.
Yeah, exactly. And so this way harder than Dominican Sue.
Yeah.
And I thought she had.
I remember Dominican Sue whenever he was in college, no one knew how to say the name.
And so I thought she had like 14 to 16 points. When I saw she had 8, I was kind of shocked. And I was like, I guess it's because when she scored, it was some of the most impactful baskets in the game.
Yeah.
And when she got rebounds, it's some of the most impactful moments of the game. And she was someone who I thought was kind of a dark horse player of the game in a way. I mean, you wouldn't give her player of the game, but just in a impactful plays, like in the big moments, delivered some really big shots.
It's what she did in the minutes that she played. 18 minutes. And she had 5 rebounds, 8 points, and she went 4 for 4 from the floor in 18 minutes. I mean,
18 minutes, and it felt like she played way more than that, but in a great way, like saying that in a very complimentive way because of how effective she was on the court. And
I was trying to see if ESPN had a plus minus for them. They don't, not that I can see anyway. But I'm sure
the ESPN like box score tracking has gotten worse and worse.
Yeah, I'm sure her plus minus was very, very high.
It had to be because I can just vividly remember so many plays from her that were big, which, by the way, unless this is men's basketball, Kentucky lost to Ole Miss today when we're recording Monday night.
66-57.
That is first off, Kentucky was in a 4-way tie for first in the SEC. That is a huge upset.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just saw that and I was like, "Oh, that's actually big."
No, that is big
for the standings. But yeah, that game was excellent. The Moody was rocking, which was nice to see, and it needs to be that way for every women's game the rest of the season. I wish I was a little closer so I could make it to one this year, just because this women's team's a lot of fun, and I'm excited to watch all these games coming up.
Yeah, if I didn't have the crazy hectic schedule that I have right now, I would be looking at some games maybe towards the back. I'm calling high school basketball games, and we're in the thick of playoffs right now, but I can't really sketch out any time. But Texas has Kentucky on their schedule coming up. I believe it's Thursday on the 13th.
Yep, Thursday and then Sunday for LSU.
Sunday for LSU, and at Kentucky, home for LSU. And then you kind of get to ride out the rest of your schedule in games that you should be favored heavily against Georgia, Florida, and Mississippi State. So all the last 3 remaining teams are bottom half of the conference. So you should take care of business in those. So, but just a great game all around, Jake. And I've got nothing more to say on it other than the fact of the Moody Center was rocking. They did a great job, and we need to keep
sold out.
Keep that energy up. throughout the rest of the regular season and even in the conference tournament as well. So, all right, Jake. Next topic, just real quickly. I'm not going to lie to the people and say that I've watched every softball game. I'm not even going to say that I've watched a single pitch because I haven't. But softball starting off their season, what is it? 8-0, 6-0,
6-0,
6-0, and they had an 8-0 win and 5 innings over Louisiana, who is receiving votes. So completely dominated.
hunting wabbits.
Silly wabbit. But yeah, so softball looking every bit as the number 1 team in the country so far up to this point.
Yeah, it really good start for them. They haven't played any ranked teams yet, so we'll kind of see once they start playing some tougher competition. But the Raging Cajuns were receiving votes to be ranked, typically a pretty solid softball squad. So that right there is a solid win, and then winning 6 games in a span of just a handful of days. That's a lot of playing. And so to be able to consistently win all those games this big, it'll be exciting just to kind of track them. 6 games felt crazy this quick to start, just because baseball obviously starts up later this week. And so we're about to be in the full swing of things.
I told you, I was like, yeah, hey, Jake, did you see the softball started off 2-0 this weekend? And you were like, they're 6-0. I was like, oh, all right. I missed a couple games, but yeah, you're right. It was a lot of games in a short period of time.
Yeah, and a great start. And now we'll just kind of see how they build from here. We have both kind of mentioned, like, it's kind of crazy. OU's not number 1 when they've won 4 straight national titles. So I need to see Texas do it. The SEC is going to be brutal in softball, just like baseball. But this is a great start to the season, albeit a start you would expect. You would expect them to be 6-0.
All right, Jake. Final topic at hand. Your near perfect prediction. Let's get into it.
Yeah. So I was being a little obviously sarcastic on the show with saying 5 tush pushes for the Super Bowl MVP, the score and everything. But I really did feel this game was going to be a beatdown. By the score, it really was. I predicted to you via text the day before the game. My dead serious prediction was 44-20 Philadelphia.
Yeah, I have the text. I can try to find it real quick and see if I can show the camera real quick.
And 40-22 is the final. So I mean, I was close. Granted, you could argue the game wasn't that close, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, there it is. Yep.
I'm curious if it's gonna read the right way, but anyway, 44-20 is his legit final prediction. And so yeah, and he sent that to me. I believe it was Saturday night, and then and you and I, Jake, we typically talk back and forth during a football game. If it's a big game, it's not always Texas games, it's not always Cowboy games. Say it's, Alabama, Georgia, we're watching it, and, we'll go back and forth. Jake, I didn't get a single text from you other than I'm just going to watch halftime. And then I was like, 23 seconds till halftime. You're like, thanks, I'll turn it on. That was our exchange.
Watched about 3 snaps after halftime and then turned it back off and went back to playing video games on my computer with my friends.
Yeah.
I
watched the whole game, and incorrect. I watched the first 3 quarters of the game. Then I was worried about getting the girls to bed, and it took the entire 4th quarter to get them all to bed. And so by the time it was already, and the game was over by that point anyway. But hey, shout out Xavier Worthy. Had a historic rookie performance in the Super Bowl and a losing effort, but still a historic rookie performance nonetheless. First Texas Longhorn to ever score a touchdown in a Super Bowl. So shout out to him. And then Ojimo got himself a Super Bowl ring. So
yeah,
kudos to you.
5th most receiving yards ever in a Super Bowl from Worthy.
8 catches, 157
and 2 touchdowns.
So some Longhorns showed out and played, and one got a Super Bowl ring. So that was my Super Bowl takeaway.
Yeah, and then I go to the office this morning, and people are sad. I mean, there was like, we lost the Super Bowl, but also they're just like, well, we had won the 2 before it, probably going to be back in it again soon. And it's just like, I'm just sitting there like a Cowboys fan. It's like, I didn't watch, but I had to have the knowledge that Philadelphia won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And then also have to realize,
I think Cowboy fans are more bummed out that Philly won a Super Bowl than Chiefs fans are that they lost to Philly in a Super Bowl.
yeah, for sure. Because also it's just everything compounding on itself as of recently, just with I put everything with the Dallas Cowboys on Jerry Jones and his son and their inability to. It's one thing to make mistakes; it's another to just never learn from them.
Jake, do you think that the Chiefs? Yeah, because I know we're going to go down a rabbit hole with Dallas if I don't change the subject. Do you think that the Chiefs? What about Travis Kelce? Do you think that there's going to start being a little bit of a restructure in the roster? A little bit, maybe a Chris Jones, some of these older players. We saw that. People forget. You have very short memories, and it drives me crazy. Tom Brady was 3-2 in his first 5 Super Bowls, and Mahomes also 3-2 in his first 5 Super Bowls. Neither won 3 in a row, but Brady went through this stage where they had to kind of reconstruct kind of those older veterans in his first handful of Super Bowls, and then there was a gap, about a 6-year gap of no Super Bowls, had to kind of refigure some things out. And then he obviously at the tail end of his career won 4 more, with 3 with New England and 1 more with Tampa Bay. But like, do you think that, to me, this is not the end of the Chiefs dynasty run with Patrick Mahomes? Even if Kelce leaves, Chris Jones leaves, some of these other guys retire and they have to do kind of a roster swap, I do think it might take a couple years. We might have a little bit of a slight break in the Chiefs' run through the NFL. They will be back, though. Eventually, they will be back.
We've already, yes, because we've already seen their front office be able to rebuild the identity of their football team. They have won Super Bowls in multiple different ways in their 3 wins. They have won being a much more offensive team. They have won being a more defensive team.
Yep.
This year they were more of a defensive team. The problem is the offense just had too many flaws that didn't get exposed in the AFC, because I think the AFC, and this is an off-season topic, but just to tease it now, I think the AFC has way better quarterbacks as a whole than the NFC. I think that's pretty undisputable. The NFC is better football teams.
Oh, yeah.
Now, sometimes the quarterbacks can win the game and it doesn't matter.
Sure.
But you have better complete football teams, especially in the trenches in the NFC.
I'm curious. I'm curious to see, and again, this is going to take some time and research and actually diligently spend some time looking this up. But I am curious how NFC teams have done against AFC teams overall, or at least playoff matches during the regular season, in terms of record wise, and kind of how that has matched up. I know Lamar Jackson has dominated the NFC in the regular season. I know Patrick Mahomes, well, the Chiefs have dominated everybody in the regular season, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm curious if the records back up what you just said in terms of the NFC teams are better, but the quarterback play is better in the AFC, but the teams end up winning the games in regular seasons. It may not necessarily show all that much.
No, and I think the best way to do it be to take, like you said, the playoff teams.
Right.
And when they play each other.
Right.
Not compare
the playing the Panthers.
And that's something that I think would be a fun off-season project.
And do it over the last 5 years when regular season playoff teams play interconference games or outer conference games, which conference has had a more success record wise?
I would expect it to be pretty close, just because I say that, but the quarterback aspect can just change games, especially in the regular season. And the Chiefs have had complete teams, and that's why they've won so many Super Bowls. But when you have this team, everyone knew it the whole season how fatally flawed they were. And then everyone just kept, was Mahomes, and he kept winning games. And I was like, yeah, but Philly's defense is way better than anyone that they
basically did exactly what the 2020 Tampa Bay Buccaneers did.
They did the exact same thing.
They
blitzed one time the whole game.
They were like, hey, how did Tampa Bay beat them? Oh, rush 4 and get to the quarterback Well, we can do that. We have the
Yeah.
roster to do that.
And I saw for some reason, there's a bunch of Boston sports fans in my timeline. And because I was like scrolling
Patriot fans were
the
rooting
everything
hard for
app
Philly.
during it. Oh, it was disgusting how hard they were riding them. And they were all like, Mahomes ain't close to Brady because of this guy. I was like, it's pretty hard to play quarterback whenever a 4-man rush is killing you, and then they have 7 in coverage.
Yeah.
It's easy to play. It's easy to play defense when you win that way.
Well, that and you also didn't even attempt to establish a run game whatsoever.
Oh, the play calling so I looked at like the drive chart this morning because some of the guys in the office were talking to me about the game. I was like, dude, I didn't watch it because they always go to talk football with me because they know I watch all the games.
Yeah.
They're like, you didn't watch it? I was like, no. I was like, the game played exactly how I thought. And they're like, you no way you thought that. I showed them the text to you. It's like Saturday night. This was my prediction. And they didn't like that.
No,
sure.
Sure.
And it was like, I looked at drive chart. I'm like, I'd have to go back and watch it, which I'm not going to do, but I did hear a lot of complaints about the play calling, and I see why looking back at it.
Yeah.
Terrible. No attempt to run the football.
They didn't even try to run the ball. They just were like, all right, Mahomes, you do it. And then Kelsey had a terrible game as well. But I think Kelsey is going to wrap it up this year. I don't see him returning next year.
I almost made a bad joke, but I'm not going to make it. But I almost made a bad joke.
I'm sure it involved a certain pop star.
Yeah, we don't need to get.
Yeah.
We're too small right now to get Swifties thrown at us. It would make our numbers higher, but really bad.
Taylor Swift is a beautifully talented woman.
Nothing bad to say.
Nothing bad to say about her. Okay, that's going to do it for today's episode. We will see you tomorrow. We drop these episodes Tuesday through Saturday at noon. We've got a lot of basketball to talk. We still have the men's game against Vanderbilt and a disgusting display of basketball, which we did not get into today on purpose because it was a positive Tuesday. Wednesday, on the other hand, we have some conversation pieces to get to, so stay tuned for that. We'll talk about where the state of the men's basketball program is, and then we will start previewing the women's game and the stretch that they have against LSU and Kentucky coming up in back-to-back games this week. Big one for basketball. So stay tuned. Again, Tuesday through Saturday, dropping at noon. For Jacob Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. You have been listening to your daily fix of all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. And as always, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.